It can be really handy to keep some magnets around the shop, and in this case, very handy. Oops. Well, yesterday I got the side decks all glued on, so that's the last few pieces, and I'm going to be putting the very last deck pieces on today. Yesterday I painted in this tabernacle locker. I still have some epoxy coating to do on the top half of the tabernacle, and there's going to be some fiberglass going on after the deck is totally down, but I'm getting ready next to glue the last deck pieces on. I may not be able to get my drill into the tabernacle locker once I glue the deck down, so I'm going to go ahead and complete this hole all the way through the bulkhead, and the bolt will be inserted from the back side of the bulkhead forward. So I'm going to go ahead and drill this out. You may recall in the past that I had to repair this bow where the two end wheels meted because it's just a butt joint and it caused it to crack. And with the deck pieces down, I've still got just a butt joint up here at the tip of the bow, and so I don't want to have to worry about that cracking again, and so I've cut a small piece of fiberglass that's going to go right across that joint underneath my deck panels, and that's going to prevent my bow from ever doing anything. And I'll probably put a small piece of fiberglass over the top of the bow after I get it sanded smooth. Previously, I used a jigsaw and a hand plane to knock down this overhanging edge of the foredeck, but I've got a lot of that to do, and so I bought a tilting router base for my Makita trim router. It was about 50 bucks, and I also have here a flush trim bit with a bottom bearing, and that lets me set the bit angle to match the side of the hull and the bearing while riding on the side of the hull just below the deck edge. Lets me flush trim the overhanging foredeck, and that's going to make this next job really easy because I've got to run all the way around this front deck as well as all the way around both side decks and the forward thwart and the centerboard trunk. So I'm going to run those now. Well, I think I'll let my router cool off for a while. It's getting pretty hot. The bit is pretty hot, but it's still sharp, and I haven't burned through. It's doing a really nice job. I won't try to use it on these last little edges. I'll just trim the edges by hand. But it really sped up the trimming of the side decks. I think the next thing I need to invest in is a vacuum attachment. It's been a few hours and I just finished putting a coat of epoxy on all of the decks, the side decks, as well as the thwart and the top of the centerboard trunk. And just to go over again what I did, I used a flush trim bit to trim off all the deck edges and around the centerboard trunk top, and then I went around also with the tilt base on my router with a 1/4 inch round over bit on the outside shear line and around all the thwart and centerboard trunk areas, and on the inside of the cockpit between the chine and the side deck I put a 3/8 round over because I think that needs a little bit bigger of a round over because you tend to lean your back against it and it's a little more comfortable with a heavier round over. I also started coating one roller's width about 3 inches down the side of the hull because pretty soon we'll be flipping this boat over to do the bottom, so I wanted to get started on, you know, when I prime this, I'm going to prime all the way down onto the side of the hull. Well, that was my unscripted attempt to fiberglass the tabernacle. I overlapped the deck by about 1 inch, and I came up the sides and I wrapped it around. I ended up with a little bit of a pucker bubble right there, and so that's one of those where if you're around in a few hours you can come back and push that in and it'll stick to itself. Otherwise I'll just grind that out when I sand this, and I will fill that with some epoxy. But I got glass all the way around the outside So it should be pretty well sealed up, and we'll get that sanded and trimmed and fill coated, and that's all the glassing for the outside of the tabernacle.